Thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I am Mustafa Sharif, an urban planner, and you're more than welcome to join my big journey of exploring the making of smarter and more livable cities. Please don't forget to follow Urbanistica on the different social media platforms, and also let's connect on LinkedIn. Big thanks to Urbanistica podcast partner AFRY. AFRY is an international engineering and design company providing sustainable solutions in the fields of energy, industry, and infrastructure. Are you ready for a new episode? Let's go for it. We have a new story today. We have two amazing storytellers from AFRY. It's a big pleasure for me to welcome you, Carolina and Petri, to Urbanistica podcast. Hey, and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How are you doing, Petri?
Oh, I'm on my first trip abroad since Corona began, and it's so busy that I'm meeting people in every corridor. So I'm completely amazed.
But you also, like, it is a long time no see. You're also famous, so everyone wants to say hello to you.
I felt not so famous during the 2 years, but working from Chile to China, so yeah. But yeah, maybe.
Welcome. I'm happy to have you here and in the studio. So thanks for coming.
Yeah.
And how are you doing, Carolina?
I'm good. I'm a bit tired. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
But it was really fun to listen to Peter this morning and the presentation.
Also came all the way from Gothenburg, right?
Yes, we did. But we came yesterday.
Yeah.
We sleep here in the J Hotel.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Cool. And also happy to have you here. So let's start with you. You're our storytellers. We start with you, Carolina. How would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about your passion?
My name is Carolina Altenstedt, and I'm part of the Food and Pharma team in Gothenburg. I have a background within biotechnology, focusing on the large-scale production of biotechnical systems. And I took my studies in Linköping University and got very involved in the student life and worked voluntarily in many different associations. I am 27 years old and still quite new in the field, but I'm very eager to learn more.
That's amazing. So what is your passion?
I would say I'm really passionate about microorganisms and how we can use them in both food and other types of applications. For example, my master thesis during my studies were I investigated how different species of fungi and mycelium could be used in like stormwater ponds and stormwater beds to see if we could increase the nutrient uptake by the plants. So I'm really interested in that.
Sounds super complicated.
Yeah, but it's really fun because you can do a lot with the microorganisms.
Yeah. And what are you doing now? Because I heard in the panel you're working with the concept of future food.
Yes, I am. My recent work at AFRY has been in the future food concept. And recently I helped the client Hooked Foods with a concept study. So yeah, I'm focused in that area.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to listen also to the stories that we're going to talk about today. Yes. And going to you, Dr.Tech, Petri, how would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about your passion?
Well, I'm a nerdy little diplomat brat. So I grew up in many places, and then when I came home to Finland, so there are two kinds of diplomat brats. Ones who never settle down and those who never want to move anywhere. So I'm the latter kind. So I came to Finland and decided this is home. I never want to go anywhere else. And of course I ended up as a consultant traveling all over the place. So I'm still the same little nerd, but I've noticed that I became a more aggressive nerd. Somebody who had to defend himself and what I thought was right and what was going to happen. So, and at the moment, although many things are not so nice. So I think it's the most interesting time in my lifetime.
Now,
Now.
it's because of so many problems in the world.
Exactly. So much to solve.
Okay.
So many possibilities, finally. So I feel like I've practiced my whole life for this moment.
Yeah. But tell me, what is your passion? What are you passionate about specifically?
I want to know and understand as much as possible about everything.
Okay. Is it possible?
No.
It's impossible.
So I will never reach it, but that's a passion.
Yeah.
I want still to try.
Yeah. And tell me now, what do you do at AFRY?
I'm a vice president in PID. Now I had a business area called Business and Concept Development, and it's really hard to describe everything we do because it involves AI, critical metals, new technologies, industrial policy, sustainability, what have you. So there is no single one thing. It's just that if it's new and interesting and important, we go there.
Yeah. So let's start. The topic or the story of today is DietMachine.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about it. And I would love to know, like, what is the background? How did you get this idea at AFRY?
So it was that the world, there's a lot of rice in the world. And what happens on the rice fields with a lot of water, a lot of residues left rot. So that has an impact very, very far away. So we started thinking, this is a butterfly effect. So a butterfly flutters its wings in China in a rice field, and then something happens in Chile. Yeah. And then we started thinking, how do we understand this butterfly effect? How can we calculate it? How can we estimate how much the impact is? And it's not just two-way. It's from Chile, it goes to southern France, and then it goes to North America and back. So how on earth can we understand this thing? And because we couldn't understand it, we needed to do something which would help us to understand it. So the best way, we had a need to understand something, so we created something to help us understand it.
Like a tool for you to understand. So how did you build up the tool? Tell us like the process. And who is the team?
In key people in the teams, I would name two. So it's Ms. Anneli Lehtinen, who's a director in this unit, and then as a junior, Ms. Ni Le, who is a process analyst. So those are the three key people in building the DietMachine.
Can you explain to me and to the listeners what is it about? Like, is it a machine?
No, not a machine, but let's put it this way, that we do a lot with AI. So we know that there is a lot of incompatible data out there that if you put it together, it starts giving some insight. So it's both about, we started collecting the data, which would be needed about people, about diets, about emissions, about land use, about water, about proteins. And then we start, it's called data wrangling. It's like wrestling or riding a bull, because the data does not want to be compatible. It hates you, it wants to be independent and incompatible.
Yeah.
So we had to wrangle a lot of data to the first version. And then we started thinking, if we model simply the world's population in groups and categories, and then so how do we make it very logical and categorical? These groups of people, these ages of people in these places with these diets, which are the diets? What are the impacts of the typical impacts of the diets in CO2 and water and land and proteins and lipids? And soon, so it kind of grew out of that. So more data, and then we started doing the first calculations. They were obviously named can't be this scale. So we started fine-tuning it until it started to look sensible.
Yeah. Tell me, is it easy to find data?
It's easy to find a lot of data, but it's not easy to find good data or the right data. And then there's a lot of data which you would like to find, but which nobody collects.
Yeah. What is a good data?
Oh, it's well ordered, so you can immediately take it in.
Mm.
And it is, of course, correct and reliable, so you can believe it comes from a reliable source.
Mm.
And then it deals with something, some aspect of the thing in all the ways needed. So let's say it has a few dimensions and all are there. So you can then start. A good data is too rich, almost too rich. So there's a lot for you to dig into and squeeze out the insights, because there's so much in it and nobody has time to dig into it. So let's get our hands dirty and get the last drop of insight out of this.
Yeah. So you have this, you have the data.
Yes.
And you collect them and you categorize them. What is the output? What does the AI do?
The AI does a lot in the earlier phases. So when we get to the final output, so then it's already has been dealt with and filtered and classified so many times. So the output is then exactly, okay, if we do this type of scenario, so then we get, for instance, emissions that are X% less than the benchmark situation, increased water use, lessened land use, and an increased need of proteins and an even more increased need of lipids.
So you get the findings or the scenarios.
Yes. So we get both what is the scenario and then what is the consequence.
Yeah. Can you share with us some of like numbers? Do you have some numbers with us to share? Like specific numbers?
Well, for instance, in one scenario, which we call the 2% flexitarian. And for those who don't know what a flexitarian is, and there might be people who are very ideological about the names of diets, but anyway, flexitarian to me simply, if you eat like the mainstream, but then also a bit more plant-based than others. So you're a bit curious and you do a bit more of that.
Yeah.
So we did a scenario where we increased the amount of senior people and middle-aged people who moved from mainstream towards a more plant-based diet. Nothing revolutionary, a very small shift. And what came out was that, for instance, for the CO2, so we could save in Europe the equivalent of 1 million flights around the world.
Wow.
So that's one of the results. Then, of course, we got proteins and lipids and others, but we think the CO2 was the kind of the catchiest outcome.
What are you going to do with the findings, with the output?
Well, here, of course, it is. Let's take a few possible uses. So first, let's say we have a startup, and a startup has a very good idea. We will take fungi or something, and we have a good technology idea, often from a university, and we will, with this technology, we will out of this fungi make this very good protein which will replace animal proteins. But often it is that the people who have founded it from the university have no clue, okay, what protein should we do? What do people want? We actually need some money because we don't have a single production plant, not even a demo plant. So what would be the kind of protein that we would get money so that we could get a demo plant, how we scale up the technology towards actually producing the protein. And often they have no this is not an evil thing. I mean, simply they have thought about they are so good with the technology, but they don't know what they should produce.
Okay.
So then we go and look for them. Okay, it looks like the best possible proteins, the top 3 of what you should do, given the feedstock you have, is this and this and this protein. And we think you should do a slight modification in your technology because the yield it doesn't give as much protein as needed, especially for that protein, which is really valuable. So we think that you should aim at that protein. And here, by the way, is the storyline for it. So when you go to the investors, so tell, look, there is lack of this protein. It causes several kinds of diseases.
Yeah.
If we can get it from fungi with our technology, we can save 50,000 people from that disease. And it's good for the medical industry, it's good for the food industry, and so on.
And then we can help from our side and help. When you have decided which type of substrate they should go for, we can help to scale up. Because these startups are often, they also often have these like amazing entrepreneurs. But when they're going to scale up the process, they bump into different kinds of problems where they don't have any clue how to figure out how to move forward.
Yeah.
And then we can help them to scale up and be involved in that kind of process.
As like a consultant to advise.
Exactly.
And then, if we continue, that was just you asked how, in what ways. So another way would be then go the other way. So there's a big company. It can be a retailer or a chemical company or a producer, and they feel that, okay, food is future food and new proteins are going to be big, and we don't have a department for that, and we should be in that. And we don't actually quite know where we should focus. So let's go in there and let's find 3 investment targets so we don't put all the eggs in one basket. But then it's the other way around. So the big company comes and we know what their strengths are. So then we look for 3 startups which would the best fit their portfolio of things. So there would be a synergy to some chemical they are making and the protein and some equipment they already have, or some location and so on. So it's both beginning from the big companies need or the small companies need, or then some like European level or world level study on where it's more an organization or an association of that.
Is the DietMachine predict the future of food, or scanning the situation and what's going to happen?
Yes, it's also we have worked in 20 years with trends and forecasts. So we really want to do forecasts. So that means that we map the space of who is there, what kind of actors, what are they planning, is there a gap? We actually draw networks, so we actually see gaps there. Okay, there's a gap there, so somebody will move. Nature abhors a vacuum, so somebody fill that gap. So who should be the first one to go into that gap? And our forecast is that it's that company and that company because they have been getting closer and closer to that space.
When I listened to your presentation in the morning, it was about people saving the planet and so on, not only about like healthy, sustainable business. You talk a lot about saving the planet.
Yes, true. So they both are involved, but like one of my former is no longer in AFRY. He was a Petri boss, so he told me once when I said I want to save the world, Petri, damn it, this is not the Red Cross.
Okay.
So I learned that don't tell angry Finnish people that you want to save the world. So pretend that you just want to do business.
Okay.
I think it's something nice to want to save the world.
Yeah, it's the mission, or at least for me, like I see, like whatever we do.
Yeah, indeed, but not everybody's mission. No.
True. So Carolina, you work with the future of food.
Yes.
Are we in like a food catastrophe?
I would not say that we are in a food catastrophe, but I would say that we need to rechange the way we consume food. A large scale of the world's population lives under starvation, and we know that's a big problem. And you have showed that by the DietMachine that we actually have all the calories needed. We can produce all the calories needed in the world right now. But we just need to change how we consume the calories and not like give all of the calories to animals so that we can eat the meat from the animals. We need to eat the proteins and the calories by ourselves.
And when you say we need to change, we have to change, like who is responsible to do the change?
That's a really hard question. I think it's really hard to say, to tell people what they can do and what they not can do. But I think it's really important to give like the knowledge to people to do the right decisions so that people by themselves can do correct and good decisions of which type of food we consume. But I also think it's important to have like political instruments that can guide us to do the right way and take the right to do the right things. I think that's important, but it's really hard. It's a really hard question. But I also think that the industry needs to change, and the industry needs to like move up and speed up the transition of how we produce and what we produce. That's also really important.
Because like what I'm thinking about, like in every topic when it comes to change, we say we need to change, cities need to change, people and so on. But in the end, I am thinking about like somebody or some actor should invite for this change or should take the lead. I don't know. Is like what do you think, Petri?
Yeah, basically it's like everybody except me should change. That's the usual message. So basically all you others should change,
but not me.
Not me. So and that usually doesn't lead everywhere.
Exactly.
Everybody recognizes that the person telling it has no intention of changing or doing what he says, but simply says, "You guys should do this while I continue as before. So please change and leave me in peace to enjoy my unsustainable lifestyle."
Yeah, I will watch you from the distance.
Yes,
but I think that the DietMachine is such a powerful tool in that area, because myself, I think it's really hard to like take in all of this knowledge. But when you get like numbers of how much you can actually produce by switching your diet to a more vegetarian diet, I think it's like a really powerful tool when you just see the numbers that it changed this much.
And how do you mentioned like you help startup to scale up? How do you do that? Can you mention like to us some the process you do?
We at AFRY are like experts in how to scale up, and we're experts of how to implement solutions.
Yeah.
So we work together with the client to do this kind of transition, and we help them and guide them. We can work in different ways. We can take in the projects and work by ourselves and do the scale up and just deliver like a project to the client. But we can also work with the client and guide the client to do it by themselves and the scale up. But I think the importance is that AFRY as a whole company is like a really wide company, and we have all these expertise in AFRY. So we at Food and Pharma are experts within the food industry and the life science industry. But if we need, for example, expertise in some other area, we can take in that knowledge as well in our projects.
Yeah. Is the DietMachine something open source to everybody to use it, or how is it?
It's based on first an original idea, and then a lot of it needs a lot of small and bigger insights. Oh, this is how you solve it. So in that sense, it's our intellectual property. So I think we can save the world also by having helping people, letting people ask us, "Hey, how should we do this?"
Yeah.
So open sourcing is still a pretty big step for something. We don't. There are very few things that we open source.
Yeah. Great. And I would love to take the chance to ask you also about the trends. We can start with you, Carolina. So tell me, the listeners, about the trends. What's going on? What's going to happen?
I think we will see a lot of more cell-based, and I think that the biotech industry is expanding a lot, and especially in the cell when it's culture cells, fermentation, and how you can culture cells. I think that is an area that will expand a lot.
Yeah. And Petri?
Yeah, one thing which is a particular favorite of mine is, the Japanese art of folding origami. And then there's something called kirigami where you're allowed to cut what you're folding paper. So we track technology and forecast a lot, and we noticed origami diving up already some 7 years ago. And it was everywhere. It started coming up everywhere. So it was in biology, it was in construction, it was in nanotechnology. So everybody was using origami. So it just seems that the way the Japanese fold things, so it has applications, be it proteins or new structures. So I'm waiting for the new origami 3D printed meat, where you combine, for instance, 3D printing and then how you fold the meat somehow so that it gets a tight structure just by folding.
Yeah, they work a lot with urban planning and future cities, and now I see a lot in the market, like vertical farming, 3D printing. Is this something that's going to happen soon, and is it really going to help our society, or no? It's just like an experiment, and very few people can eat from this kind of production. What do you think?
I'm not an expert in 3D printing, but I know that's a field that is expanding as well. But I think what I've read, it is hard to come to the market and decrease the cost of the product. Vertical farming is something that is expanding a lot, and I think that is absolutely something we will see in the couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so you're considering vertical farming as something going to be real in our cities?
I think so.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you think, Petri?
Yeah, absolutely. Since we have done also work for clients on vertical farming for 5 years, so many people want to do it.
Mm. And how do you think, now, thinking from urban planning, that we need spaces to this kind of new infrastructure? So where are we going to place all these vertical farming, 3D printers, productions, and so on? Are we going to have them out of the city, or do you think about spaces when you develop the technology?
Well, space and time. So one of my particular favorites is time. I want to crack a lot of problems with time, but again, a nerdy answer. So I often use science fiction as a forecasting tool because you can find a lot of what has happened. It's partly a self-fulfilling prophecy because somebody writes a book and then another smart scientist read it and, okay, this is a good idea. I want to make it a reality. So therefore, also in spaces and cities, I would almost recommend, read some of the best science fiction on megalopolises or new types of cities and how they are built. So you will get ideas from it.
Yeah. But is it going to happen, or no, it will stay only in books?
I think absolutely will happen.
In Gothenburg, we have this area in the supermarket store where we actually grow a lot of vegetables inside the store, and they take the oxygen and the carbon dioxide in the air from the store and actually grow the plants in the store.
This is super cool.
Yeah, that is super cool. And I think that is something that also will be increasing.
Scaled up.
Exactly.
So in order to become more sustainable in the way that we produce and consume food, what are the challenges that we are facing?
Oh, I think it's also a problem of scale because we just need so much of it, and it needs so many countries are dependent on import. So we have built a very, very big, large, space-consuming, time-consuming trade-consuming apparatus, and it's not easy to quickly change anything of that. And we have Ireland, take Great Britain, so it has always been dependent on that it imports most of the things it has. So we have places which are fully dependent on somebody else producing it for them. So there's nothing wrong with that. Of course, I agree with that. So, but still, it is a complex system. So we have to start bit by bit, do a small change and see how it works. And if it works, so then start expanding, because messing up something on a global scale, well, we tried it with the pandemic and other things. So it doesn't look good. So.
But these small changes, you mean like instead of importing, we should produce locally?
Part of that, yes. Producing locally used to be a very ideological thing, but the more one thinks of it now with the supply chains broken, so it becomes pure common sense that don't depend on 7,000 kilometers of transport. Instead, get it closer. You will feel a lot safer and better and cheaper also.
Yeah, and in the presentation you mentioned about the supply chain, and if there is a delay here, the system is too perfect. Can you share with us, like, what is your reflection about this?
Yeah, so how can a system where just one ship due to one person's advice in the Suez Canal goes a bit sideways, and then you have to wait 6 months for something in global trade? So that is a really badly designed system. So we have to improve it in whatever ways we do it, or do we somehow divide it regionally and then have some global main lines? So that's a different problem, but simply Corona has shown that the global supply chain does not work like it is now. So it has to be fixed.
But are we ready to do that, to change?
Well, I would say that if you have to wait 6 months for something and then again wait 6 months, so you're getting fed up, and then you begin to be ready to change. Or then you just wait 12 months for the next thing.
So Carolina, what are the other challenges that we are facing?
We have a lot of challenges. I think that we need to take care of all of the side streams that we have and see the side streams as a product instead, so that we can close the loop. So don't see the side streams as waste. I think that's a problem that we have, but that's also an area where we see that it's expanding. And from AFRY side, we know that a lot of clients are actually requesting this type of help to see which side streams is possible to use and how can we use them and so on. I think that's something that is increasing.
Yeah. And you're working a lot close to the clients. Do you see that there is a willing to innovate and change and lead?
Absolutely. And there's a lot of startups coming, but I also believe that, and I also think that the big companies are also wanting to change. It can be harder for bigger companies to change, but they are really willing to change. And I think that we have like a really interesting time ahead. And I think that a lot of things will happen in a couple of years.
That's very interesting, because what I want to give to the listeners, where are we heading to? Are we going to die because there's not going to be food, or is the future bright?
Oh, we always manage somehow. So it just depends on how big are the problems when we fix things. So it might be tough for a while, but somehow it always works.
Yeah, we survive.
Yeah.
And I also think that a lot of things will happen in a couple of years. And I hope that.
Happy to hear that.
Yeah.
So let's go to the last section of this episode, and it's more about like reflections from you. So each one of you, we can start with you, Carolina. If you're allowed to create one rule in all our cities, what is this rule going to be?
Can we start with Petri? I don't know.
you can create one rule, like let's say a policy, or you can add something like physical to all the cities.
Oh
Okay,
my
so
God.
take your time to think about it. Petri, you are in charge of this planet. You are allowed to add one rule or to add something physical in all our cities. What will you add?
Oh, I mean, if I'm, but the first thing that comes to mind, so it would be completely unpublishable in this broadcast. But now, if we take something correct, so food waste. So there is so much food waste that even though I don't like this kind of watching people, so there should be an upper limit on food waste. So, for instance, a tax on if you exceed a certain amount of food waste, so then you have to pay a tax on it. So,
Okay.
So I think that doesn't restrict the freedoms of people too much because it's a horrible waste and nobody benefits from it.
So taxes on food waste.
Yeah. There's a limit.
A limit, of course.
But still,
our salary going to be like a lot on CO2 taxes, food waste taxes. It's good for us.
But
it's good.
Still CO2. It's immediately on every single one.
Yeah.
But food waste would be that there's a limit. Okay, nothing is perfect, but if you really exceed it, so this is already obscene.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't be allowed to just waste and
exactly.
waste.
But do you see that in the future we are going to have it?
In some places, yes. I can well imagine that, for instance, and I don't mean any political thing, but Singapore is an example of a city-state which often has very strong rules. Because it is very small, it's successful, and it needs to be very disciplined. So I might imagine a rule in Singapore that no food waste or...
Yeah, interesting.
And I've come up with mine.
Okay, share with us.
Mine is like, it would be good if it was like this, but I would give every city infinity of water, because water is something that would be a big problem in the future. And we really need to see water as something important.
Are you talking about like a drinking water or
Yes.
water for farming?
Drinking water, and for farming, water will be a really big problem in a lot of cities in a couple of years.
How do we solve this, or how are you going to solve this? I saw like there are machines that produce water from the air, something like this, but I don't know like the amount of that.
That's Star Wars, moisture farming. Luke Skywalker's aunt and aunt.
But I think we need to see water more as a resource, but we also need to have like other technologies, how to clean water and purify water. Take water from the oceans. I know that's really expensive and really energy demanding today. We need to accelerate that process.
Yeah. When you two are much more involved in this than me, but when you like deal with the project, do you see like the future is dark or I would love to know like how do you, because you have all the facts. You have DietMachine tells you like how much food waste and how many people are hungry. How do you feel about the future?
It's like a really hard question.
It's very philosophical and deep question, by the way.
Okay, so I can help by starting. So I'm a black and white pessimist, optimist. So that means that I'm interested in everything new. I think things are going to be developed. At the same time, I'm deeply pessimistic. I manage to be both at the same time. So I look at things darkly and cynically and sarcastically. So I kind of somehow combine both. So I'm both optimistic and things are going to work, but then dark and pessimistic and cynical. I should avoid it, but cynicism comes.
Okay, so when you have a project, you say, oh yes, we're gonna change the world. And at the same time, you say, oh no, it's hopeless.
No, but I think that we have a lot of technology in place so that we can change the world. But I think that we really need to speed up and make it more quickly than we are.
So you're more positive, like
I'm positive, and I think it's important to stay positive. I really think we need to speed up.
Yeah. Well, and the last two questions. The first one is going to be, you giving me and the listeners 3 takeaway messages.
I'm thinking.
Okay, should we start with them? Okay. So, Dr.Tech, what are your 3 takeaway messages to us?
So maybe first, small things do translate and magnify. So it's not movie magic, but simply that if you do change something in your own diet, so it will propagate to the people who produce and sell the food. And they will see, okay, there's a change in demand, and they will change the value chain. Those small things do matter. And there are whole fleets going around and the world's biggest harbors operating, and everything is based on what you want, actually. So you have an impact on it. So change what you want, and it will take a little while, but then also what's being transported and produced will change. And then a more personal thing. So I'm a nerd who is almost afraid of exotic foods or things I haven't tasted before. So if I have dared and actually even like plant-based food, so that also is kind of a challenge to others, that if this kind of nerd does it, so you should also dare to taste these things.
Yeah.
They might even be surprisingly good.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Doctor. And Carolina.
I need to agree with Petri that small and simple changes in the food consumption can make a big difference. And I think the second one is that you just need to start somewhere. You just need to start. And that's like the biggest thing you can do. And lastly, I think we should read and understand how the things we do actually affects the environment and the climate.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Carolina. And the last question is going to be you asking it to me and to the listeners. So what is your question to us?
How often do you actually think about changing your diet? And I don't mean by, of course, you don't need it, but reducing weight, but simply changing it for the sake of something else. Or do you think about it?
Interesting question. Carolina, your question?
How often do you talk about it with like friends and families of what we consume, actually, how it affects? That's something you discuss with your family and friends.
Good question. Well, thank you so much for coming here, for doing all this job to change the planet and to do good business. And I'm happy to talk to you, and hopefully we talk more in the coming episodes. Thank you so much, Carolina. Thank you so much, Petri.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. You learned something new and also got inspired by the guest. Don't forget to share the episode on your social media and recommend it to people you think they are really interested in this topic. Thank you so much again for giving your valuable time to Urbanistica podcast. I am Mustafa Sharif. Keep up the good work. Keep loving cities.